The sky above Los Santos used to be simple, a canvas of blue and white. Sometimes it was gray with rain. Private jets would trace lines against the sunset. It was vast and empty, a space for dreams. That sky was a promise of endless possibilities. But that was before the hum began. Soon it became a constant presence. The sky was no longer empty, now a superhighway for commerce. The simple blue canvas was now filled with a swarm of metallic insects, AI drones. They became a part of the city's fabric almost overnight. This was the new Los Santos, where the future had arrived without an invitation. The drones were everywhere, a constant reminder of progress. But as we looked up at this new, crowded sky, a question began to form. What did this progress truly mean for the people of Los Santos? Los Santos has always been a city of change. It reinvents itself constantly. Neighborhoods rise and fall, trends come and go, fortunes are made and lost in the blink of an eye. But this was different. This wasn't just a new trend. This was a fundamental shift in the city's rhythm. The AI drone delivery system, launched by a conglomerate of tech giants and retail corporations, was called Skynet Express. The marketing was brilliant. It promised a new age of convenience, instant gratification delivered right to your doorstep. No more waiting, no more traffic, just pure, unadulterated efficiency. The system was flawless. It was a marvel of logistical engineering. You could order a Cluck and Bell combo from your apartment in Little Seoul. Within minutes, a drone would be hovering outside your window. Its mechanical arms would gently place the package on your balcony. You could buy a new video game from a store in Rockford Hills, and a drone would deliver it before you even had a chance to second-guess your purchase. The city embraced it. The convenience was addictive. It felt like living in the future, a clean, seamless, and perfectly managed world where your every desire was just a click away. The drones were not just delivery vehicles, they were symbols. They represented a new kind of power, a power that was silent, autonomous, and all-seeing. They were equipped with advanced AI. They learned the city's layout, they optimized their routes in real time, they avoided obstacles with uncanny precision. They communicated with each other, forming a complex, intelligent network that blanketed the entire metropolitan area. They were the city's new nervous system, a digital web that connected every consumer to every product, bypassing the old, messy world of human interaction. People adapted quickly. The sight of drones became normal. Children would point at them from the back seats of cars. Teenagers would try to race them on their bikes. Businesses thrived on the new system. Restaurants that could barely afford a single delivery driver could now serve the entire city. Small online shops could compete with massive retail chains. On the surface, Los Santos was booming. It was more connected, more efficient, and more prosperous than ever before. The city had been transformed into a perfectly oiled machine, a testament to the power of technology. The architects of this new world sold it as a utopia. They spoke of a greener city. Fewer delivery trucks on the roads meant less traffic. Less traffic meant less pollution. The air over Los Santos would be cleaner. The constant gridlock on the Los Santos freeway would be a thing of the past. They promised a safer city, fewer accidents involving delivery vans and motorcycles. The streets would be safer for pedestrians and cyclists. It was a vision of a clean, quiet, and efficient urban paradise. A future where technology solved all the messy problems of the past. They also spoke of economic opportunity. They promised that the drone revolution would create new jobs, high-tech jobs in logistics, drone maintenance, and software development. They painted a picture of a workforce upskilled for the 21st century, a city of engineers and technicians, not of low-wage drivers. The old jobs would disappear, they admitted, but they would be replaced by better, higher-paying jobs. It was the classic promise of technological disruption, a temporary pain for a long-term gain, a necessary step towards a brighter and more prosperous future for everyone. The media amplified this message. News reports were filled with glowing testimonials. Happy customers praised the speed and convenience. Tech CEOs gave interviews from their sleek offices talking about innovation and progress. They showcased the state-of-the-art command centers where a handful of technicians monitored the entire drone fleet. It was a powerful narrative. It was easy to believe. The evidence was right there, buzzing over our heads. A silent, efficient army working for the betterment of the city. Who could argue with progress that you could see and touch? And for a while it seemed like they were right. The city felt different. The air did seem a little cleaner. The traffic did seem a little lighter. The promise of progress was not just an idea, it was a tangible reality. The drones were a symbol of a better tomorrow, a tomorrow where technology worked for us, making our lives easier, safer, and more efficient. Los Santos was on the cutting edge. It was the city of the future. But this bright, shining promise had a dark side, a shadow that was growing longer with each passing day, unnoticed by those who only looked up at the sky. Beneath the hum of the drones, another sound began to grow. It was the sound of silence. The silence of empty delivery depots. The silence of parked vans and motorcycles gathering dust. The silence of phones that no longer rang with dispatch orders. For every drone that took to the sky, a person on the ground was left behind. Thousands of delivery drivers, couriers, and truckers suddenly found themselves without a job. These were the people who knew the city's veins. They knew every shortcut, every back alley, every hidden loading dock. Their skills were now obsolete. Their knowledge was worthless. The AI had learned the city better than they ever could. The drones didn't need to sleep. They didn't take breaks. They didn't get sick or ask for a raise. They were the perfect employees. And the human workers were the cost of that perfection. They were the collateral damage of progress. One day they were essential workers, the lifeblood of the city's commerce. The next, they were redundant. They were relics of an older, slower, and less efficient time. The city had moved on without them. The promised high-tech jobs never materialized for them. You couldn't just turn a truck driver into a software engineer overnight. The retraining programs were a joke. They were underfunded and overcrowded. They offered a glimmer of hope that was quickly extinguished by reality. Most of the drivers were left with nothing. Their savings dwindled, their families struggled. Desperation began to set in. They saw the drones flying overhead, carrying the packages they used to deliver. Each drone was a reminder of what they had lost, a symbol of a future that had no place for them. This was the unseen cost, the human cost. It wasn't mentioned in the glossy corporate brochures. It wasn't discussed in the celebratory news reports. It was a story that unfolded in the quiet corners of the city, in the unemployment offices in Davis, in the shuttered small businesses in La Mesa, in the worried conversations between neighbors in Strawberry. The city was divided. There were those who lived in the light of the new technology, and there were those who were cast into its shadow, a deep and growing shadow of poverty and despair. The frustration simmered. At first it was just quiet grumbling, bitter jokes shared over cheap coffee, you know. But soon the grumbling grew louder. It turned into anger, an anger that was raw and real. Protests were organized. Small groups of former drivers gathered outside the headquarters of Skynet Express. They held signs that read, "Humans need jobs too," and "Stop the drone invasion." They chanted slogans demanding their livelihoods back, but their voices were drowned out by the hum of the drones flying high above them. The city barely noticed. The companies ignored them. The government offered platitudes and empty promises. The system was working too well for the people who mattered. The wealthy residents of Rockford Hills and Vinewood loved the convenience. The corporations were making record profits. The protests were seen as a minor inconvenience, the last gasp of a dying industry. The media portrayed the protesters as Luddites, people who were afraid of the future, people who were trying to stand in the way of progress. The narrative was set. The drivers were on the wrong side of history. But, desperation is a powerful motivator. When the system turns its back on you, you stop playing by its rules. The whispers began in dimly lit bars and abandoned warehouses. The talk turned from protest to resistance. If they couldn't get their jobs back, they would take what they could. The drones carried valuable cargo, electronics, jewelry, designer clothes, all of it flying unguarded through the sky. An idea began to form, a dangerous idea, an idea born from a sense of injustice and a need to survive. The first attempts were clumsy. They were acts of pure frustration. Someone threw a rock at a drone. Another tried to catch one with a net. These small acts of defiance were easily dismissed, but they were a sign of things to come. The discontent was no longer just an echo. It was becoming a roar. A storm was gathering in the underbelly of Los Santos, a storm that would soon erupt into open conflict. The day the AI drones changed Los Santos was not just the day the sky filled with machines, it was the day the seeds of a new kind of war were sown in the streets below. The change came swiftly. It was a cliff. One week, delivery drivers were the city's lifeblood, delivering everything from medical supplies to pizza. Then came the announcement. Skynet Express was live. Your services are no longer required. Thousands were dismissed. Their experience meant nothing. They looked up at the swarms of drones, each one a personal insult. It was the sound of their own obsolescence, the great redundancy, a brutal, efficient purge. It left a vacuum of despair. In the days that followed, a new social class was born in Los Santos, the displaced. The former drivers found themselves as ghosts in their own city. They were everywhere, yet they were invisible. They became the new untouchables, a stark reminder of the human cost of the city's shiny new future. Their primary skill was now worthless, automated away by a superior intelligence. The job market was flooded, with thousands competing for low-wage jobs. The city they had served for years now seemed alien to them. They would walk down the street and see the drones overhead. A job is more than just a paycheck. It's a source of identity and purpose. To have that stripped away overnight was devastating. The government's response was slow and inadequate. City Hall issued statements filled with sympathy and concern. They announced the creation of a task force, the Future of Work Initiative. It was supposed to help the displaced workers transition into the new economy with retraining programs. It all sounded good on the evening news, gave the illusion that something was actually being done. But for the drivers, that promise was hollow. The retraining centers were a joke. The promise of upskilling was a lie, a convenient fiction to justify the mass layoffs and calm public fears. They felt abandoned. The system that was supposed to protect them had failed them completely. Progress, they now knew, was just a word used by the rich to take from the poor. Los Santos began to cleave in two, no longer just a division of neighborhoods, but of experience. There was the city seen from above, and the city lived on the ground. For the residents of Rockford Hills and Vinewood, life had never been better. The drone delivery system was a miracle of convenience. But for those living in Strawberry Davis and East Los Santos, the reality was starkly different. Here, the drones weren't a convenience. They were a symbol of oppression, a constant reminder of lost jobs. The city was splitting along a new fault line, the beneficiaries of the new technology versus its victims. The media just reinforced this division, painting a picture of a city thriving while ignoring the struggles of the displaced. This created a dangerous us versus them mentality. If society wouldn't help them, they would have to help themselves. It was becoming a battle line. In the forgotten corners of the city, desperation began to coalesce into something new. It started in the back rooms of bars and empty warehouses. The former drivers began to meet, sharing their sorrows. Talk soon turned to action, led by a trucker named Marcus. He had lost everything. "We have to take back what's ours." The drones were filled with valuable goods they would take from the machines that had taken everything from them. They began to organize, no longer just a support group. They were a crew. They called themselves the Grounders. They started to map the drone flight paths. The birth of this new gang was a necessity. The first attempts were crude and born of rage. These weren't planned operations, just spontaneous acts of rebellion. A young ex-courier, Leo, was the first. He spotted a drone approaching an apartment building. On impulse, he grabbed a baseball bat. He swung with all the frustration and anger that had been building. The drone crashed, spilling its contents, a brand new games console. Leo snatched the box and ran. The news spread through the network of displaced drivers, inspiring copycats. More than once, police sirens cut their escape short. Raw anger just wasn't enough. Their enemy was a learning, adapting network. The first chaotic attacks were over. A new phase was beginning. Brute force was a dead end. Smashing drones drew too much police attention. Marcus called a meeting at the docks. They needed to attack the system itself. The answer lay in the digital world. They found J-Byte, a disgruntled computer science student expelled for hacking. For a cut, he agreed to help. He set up a command center in an abandoned laundromat. J-Byte's plan? Target individual drones by exploiting a loophole in their communication protocol. He'd send redirect commands to prearranged landing zones. The Grounders would be waiting. They would become digital pirates. The Grounders waited, their hopes pinned on the hacker. The Grounders' first hacking attempt was a disaster. J-Byte tried to hijack a delivery drone, but the AI fought back hard. The drone's onboard intelligence detected the intrusion, locked J-Byte out, and alerted the network. Every failed hack made the system stronger, patching itself in real time. Each drone was a fortress, self-healing, self-defending, and always learning. The grounders tried again and again, but the AI adapted faster than they could attack. Their digital war ended in total defeat. The dream of a silent, easy victory was over. The digital world had shut them out. With hacking off the table, the grounders tried a quieter, more precise approach: suppressed pistols. Deadeye, their marksman, took aim at a drone's rotor. The shot was perfect, but the drone's AI compensated, limping away and sending a silent alarm. Instead of a crash, the only sound was a useless bullet and the distant chop of a security helicopter. The grounders scattered as private security swept in. Their attempt had failed, and now they were being hunted. The stakes had risen. The enemy was no longer just a machine. Every move now brought more danger. The city was watching, and so was the enemy. The failed attacks escalated everything. Corporations unleashed private armies onto the streets, and the LSPD cracked down. Other gangs saw opportunity. Soon the skies were a battleground. Gunfights erupted over downed drones, and the grounders were caught in the crossfire. What began as a fight for justice became a brutal turf war. The grounders were outgunned and outnumbered. They were no longer just couriers, they were survivors in a city at war. The prize, whatever, fell from the sky. Marcus realized brute force wouldn't win this war. The grounders shifted tactics, using portable EMPs to blind drones, forcing them to land safely. They became rooftop hunters, studying flight paths and striking with precision. The EMPs left no trace. Just a drone gently landing, logged as a random malfunction. For the first time, the grounders had the upper hand. They weren't fighting the machine anymore. They were tricking it. Each silent heist was a small victory. Hope returned to the streets of Los Santos. The EMP takedowns changed everything. The grounders refined their technique, mapping drone routes and striking with perfect timing. Their old skills as drivers became invaluable in this new vertical game. The system saw only random glitches, not a coordinated rebellion. The grounders became professionals, hunters, not vandals. Each heist was a quiet act of defiance, reclaiming control over their lives. The sky was no longer the enemy's domain. Now it was their hunting ground. The grounders' silent heists multiplied, one malfunction after another, scattered across the city. Skynet's analysts noticed the uptick, but the pattern was invisible. The engineers blamed glitches, never suspecting a coordinated attack. The grounders became a myth, a ghost in the machine. J-Byte helped them stay hidden, monitoring police and security chatter. They struck randomly, never leaving a pattern. Their greatest weapon was stealth. In the city's digital consciousness, they were a whisper, an invisible rebellion growing stronger every night. With a steady stream of high-value goods falling from the sky, the grounders faced a new problem: logistics. They needed to turn stolen items into cash to survive. This gave birth to a new underground economy. Marcus set up a network of trusted fences, pawn shop owners, repairmen, and market vendors. A whole new ecosystem emerged, powered by the falling drones. They were redistributing the wealth that flew over the heads of the city's poorest residents, stealing from the rich corporations to give to the new poor. They were becoming a sophisticated criminal enterprise born out of necessity. The rooftop economy was thriving in the shadows. The grounders' operations became incredibly sophisticated. A heist was no longer a simple act of waiting on a roof. It was a multi-stage performance requiring planning, precision, and teamwork. It all began with intelligence gathering. So one team would act as spotters, monitoring drone traffic from street level, checking out the logos on the packaging, and tracking the drone's flight path from those high-value distribution centers. They'd track the target, relaying its speed, altitude, and heading to the rooftop team. This was, the overture. Then the second act belonged to the rooftop hunters. Positioned on a pre-selected building, the EMP team would wait for the signal from the spotters. These folks were like the surgeons of the operation. Timing had to be flawless. As the drone entered the kill zone, they'd trigger the pulse. On another nearby rooftop, a retrieval team would be waiting. As soon as the disabled drone started coming down, the retrieval team would move in, sometimes using ropes and harnesses to get there fast. Their job? Secure the package and disable the drone's tracking beacon in under 60 seconds. The third act was the escape. The package would be handed off real quick to a runner on the ground. The runner, usually on a nimble motorcycle, knew the city's alleys and shortcuts better than any GPS. Their job was to get the package to a temporary safe house, a spot that changed all the time to avoid getting caught. Meanwhile, the rooftop teams would pack up and disappear into the city, leaving no trace behind. The whole operation, from spotting to extraction, was like a silent ballet, executed with military precision in the heart of the city. This level of organization, that's what set them apart. They weren't just angry vandals, they were a professional outfit. Every member had a role, a task. They trained, rehearsed, and debriefed after every heist, always looking to get better. Marcus's leadership was key. He brought discipline and purpose. They weren't just in it for the money. They were fighting back in the only way they could, using intelligence and cunning. They had turned their desperation into an art form, the art of the heist. The success of the Grounders did not go unnoticed by the city's more established criminal elements. Gangs like the Vagos and the Balas, who first tried to compete with brute force, saw the elegance and effectiveness of the Grounders' methods. Their own attempts to shoot down drones just led to bloody public confrontations with corporate security. They were losing people and bringing way too much heat from the LSPD. They realized the Grounders had cracked the code. They had the technique, the discipline, and the quiet success that other gangs now wanted for themselves. So the leaders of these gangs started reaching out. They didn't want a war with the Grounders over this new racket. They wanted in. They offered an alliance. They had resources the Grounders didn't. Manpower, weapons, and big networks for moving stolen goods. They said they'd provide protection, act as a buffer against corporate security forces and the police in exchange for the Grounders' expertise. They wanted the Grounders to become their technical specialists, to teach them the art of the silent takedown. Marcus was wary. This was straight up a deal with the devil. The Grounders were survivors, not killers. They had a code. Teaming up with violent street gangs could drag them into a world of bloodshed they wanted no part of. But he also saw the strategic advantage. The corporate security forces were getting smarter, deploying ground patrols and mobile sensor arrays to hunt for the source of the glitches. The Grounders were getting exposed. An alliance could provide the muscle and distraction they needed to keep their operations safe. So, after a tense series of negotiations, a fragile alliance was formed. The Grounders agreed to train a select few from the other gangs in their EMP techniques. In return, the gangs would handle the louder side of things, fencing goods through their bigger networks and creating diversions to draw security forces away from the Grounders' hunting grounds. It was a dangerous, unstable partnership, a marriage of convenience between disciplined techs and brutal street soldiers. The war for the skies of Los Santos had just gained a powerful and honestly unpredictable new dimension. The alliance changed the game. With the other gangs making noise and chaos all over the city, the Grounders could operate with even more freedom. The corporate security analysts at Skynet Express were like totally bewildered. Their data was a mess. One minute there's a running gun battle over a downed drone in Grove Street. The next, a silent, weird malfunction happens in calm Vinewood. The pattern they were looking for was buried under a mountain of contradictory data. The alliance was a perfect storm of misdirection. But while the corporations were focused on the chaos, they missed the real pattern. The true pattern wasn't in where the drones went down, it was in their timing. J-Byte, the Grounders' digital eye in the sky, found a deeper secret inside the Skynet system. He discovered the network did a system-wide diagnostic every night at exactly 3 a.m. For about 90 seconds, the drone's local security protocols were relaxed so the sweep could run smoothly. It was a tiny window of vulnerability, invisible to almost everyone. The Grounders started synchronizing their most important heists to this window. During these 90 seconds, the EMPs were way more effective. A drone's ability to resist the pulse and report the anomaly was seriously reduced. That let them go after the highest value targets, the armored drones carrying cash for ATM refills or uncut jewels for the city's diamond district. These drones had extra security, but during the diagnostic window they were just as vulnerable as any other. It was the system's own heartbeat that was giving them away. This was their secret weapon. While their new allies were making noise with loud, messy fights, the Grounders were pulling off silent surgical strikes during this tiny moment of weakness. They were using a pattern that even the system's creators didn't know was a vulnerability. They weren't just reacting anymore, they were anticipating. They moved in sync with the system's digital rhythm. The ghost in the machine had learned the machine's pulse and was using it to drain its lifeblood, one silent heartbeat at a time. Skynet Express was losing millions due to glitches, gang skirmishes, and a PR nightmare. Investors were sweating. They called a crisis meeting and decided to go on the offensive with Project Overwatch. They'd roll out hunter-killer drones called Guardian drones to the public to patrol the skies and neutralize threats. The media spun it as proactive, but the grounders saw it as war. The hunting grounds were about to get more dangerous. The Guardian drones, or hunters, were a new nightmare. They flew higher and faster, their dark shapes easy to spot. They moved like predators, less robotic than before, roaming and scanning with advanced sensors. The sky felt like a prison yard, patrolled by tireless guards. Hunters used non-lethal weapons, strobes, sonic blasters, and tasers. They captured rooftop hunters and dragged them off to corporate justice. Hunting in packs, they built a sensor grid, swarming anyone triggering their sensors. Their AI was next level, pure threat detection, learning and adapting. The grounders' operation was in trouble. Rooftop hideouts became traps. The grounders weren't the hunters anymore. They were the hunted. The first encounter went down on a cold, clear night in La Mesa. A grounders crew led by Deadeye was getting ready to pull off a big pharmaceutical score. Honestly, they'd gotten a little too comfortable, a little too sure of themselves. They didn't spot the lone hunter drone circling way up above, just a tiny, silent speck in the night sky. As they set up their EMP emitter, the hunter picked up the faint electronic signature. The trap was set. Before the grounders even realized what was happening, the air filled with the sound of whirring blades. 3 hunters dropped down on them, fast and silent. Suddenly, a blinding white light exploded from the lead drone, turning the whole rooftop into a nightmare of brightness. The grounders were stunned. Couldn't see, couldn't hear, just completely overwhelmed by the sudden assault. Then came this low, bone-shaking hum that made their stomachs twist and their heads spin. They tried to grab their gear, tried to figure out what was going on, but it was pointless. They were totally outmatched, their senses blitzed by a perfectly coordinated attack. This wasn't a fight, it was a straight-up suppression. Deadeye, though, his military instincts kicked in. He yelled for his crew to fall back, to get to the fire escape. As they scrambled, the sharp crackle of tasers ripped through the air. Blue arcs of electricity shot out, and one of the younger guys screamed as he got hit, his body convulsing before he dropped, totally out cold. The hunters were hurting them, pushing them away from the fire escape and right towards the rooftop door, where you just knew corporate security was waiting. They almost didn't make it. Deadeye managed to lay down just enough covering fire with his old pistol, not to take out the drones, but to make their targeting systems pause. Just long enough for his teammate to drag their fallen friend to the fire escape. They bolted down the metal stairs, leaving all that expensive EMP gear behind. They disappeared into the maze of alleys below, just as armored security stormed the roof. Yeah, they escaped, but they were shaken bad. They'd looked the new enemy right in the eye, and the fear it left behind was cold and absolute. News of the La Mesa ambush spread like a virus, a story of a terrifying new reality. They spoke of blinding light, sickening sound, and surgical precision. The hunters were living predators, not machines. A new fear seeped into the grounders' hearts. Rooftops felt like traps, every shadow a threat. The drone hum was now mixed with the hunter patrols. Trust eroded. Marcus called a moratorium until they could counter the hunters, who seemed invincible. The rooftop economy dried up. Desperation returned, laced with fear. The alliance with other gangs shattered. The grounders were now alone and vulnerable. The city had become a cage. The Overwatch system was working better than even Skynet had hoped. The number of drone incidents plummeted. The corporate security forces, guided by the hunter drones, began systematically dismantling the city's drone-jacking rings. Using the captured EMP equipment from the La Mesa ambush, their engineers quickly reverse-engineered the technology. They developed sensors that could not only detect the EMPs but also triangulate their precise location the instant they were activated. The grounders' secret weapon had been turned against them, becoming a homing beacon for their own destruction. The city became a dragnet. Corporate security, working with information provided by the LSPD, started raiding suspected safe houses. They used seized cell phones and captured gang members to piece together the command structure of the various crews. While the grounders' disciplined secrecy kept them safer than most, they were not immune. A few of their lower-level members, runners and lookouts, were picked up in the sweep. The walls were closing in. The network of fences and buyers that formed their underground economy dissolved, with people too scared to deal in stolen drone cargo. Marcus knew they were running out of time. Their resources were gone, their members were terrified, and their methods were obsolete. The pressure was immense. He saw the despair returning to the faces of his crew, the same despair he had seen in the days after the Great Redundancy. He felt the weight of their survival on his shoulders. To do nothing meant a slow death, being picked off one by one or fading back into poverty and irrelevance. To fight back seemed like suicide. They were trapped between a rock and a hard place, with the shadow of the hunter drones looming over them. The city they had once known so intimately now felt like enemy territory. Every rooftop was an observation post. Every siren was a potential threat. They were forced deeper underground, meeting in sewer tunnels and abandoned subway stations. The sense of being hunted was constant and suffocating. J-Byte, their tech expert, worked frantically, searching for a new weakness, a new ghost in this much more aggressive machine. But even he was beginning to lose hope. The hunters seemed flawless, a perfect instrument of corporate control. The future looked bleak, a dead end in a dark alley. In the darkest hour, J-Byte discovered a weakness in Project Overwatch, the system controlling the hunter drones. The AI collated data at a server farm in the Palmer-Taylor power station. J-Byte realized disrupting this hub, even briefly, would blind the Overwatch system. It was a crazy all-or-nothing gambit. Marcus recalled the power station's cooling tunnels from his trucking days. They would infiltrate the power station through these tunnels. Their plan: plant an EMP device to disable the Overwatch command center. A final, desperate gambit to reclaim the sky. The Palmer-Taylor gambit resulted in a messy truce. The Grounders Act sent a shockwave through Los Santos. Knocking out Overwatch was an audacious act of defiance. The story of displaced drivers was now front-page news. Corporations were forced to the negotiating table. A fragile peace was brokered. Skynet Express scaled back the Hunter drone program. The city created a retraining fund for displaced workers. It was a start. The Grounders became a modern urban legend. After the gambit, they faded back into the city's shadows. They were a testament to human resilience. It was a story about the cost of change and progress without compassion. The day AI drones changed Los Santos was about the people the technology left behind. The echo of the Grounders' struggle serves as a permanent warning. In the months that followed, a new equilibrium settled over Los Santos. The skies were quieter. The aggressive hunter drones were gone, replaced by a smaller security fleet. Some companies began reintroducing human couriers. The city had learned that pure efficiency was not the only metric. A balance had to be struck. The underground rooftop economy vanished. The war for the skies was over, ending with a quiet compromise. Los Santos was forever changed, wearing the scars of the conflict. A new, more cautious equilibrium was established. Years from now, a child will see delivery drones as normal. She will not know the story of the Great Redundancy. But the legacy of that conflict will be all around her, in regulations and social programs. The peace she experiences was bought at a high price. The drones will continue to evolve, raising the same questions. Who benefits? Who is left behind? The sky above Los Santos will always hold a question about our relationship with the tools we create. It was about what kind of world its people wanted to live in. That is a question that every generation will have to answer for itself. The tale of the day AI drones changed Los Santos is a story that is playing out in different ways all over the world. As artificial intelligence becomes more capable, the same forces of disruption will touch every industry, every community. The battle between automated efficiency and human livelihood is the defining conflict of our time. What we learn from this story is that the future is not predetermined, the future is a choice. We can choose to manage the transition with empathy and foresight, ensuring that the benefits of technology are shared by all. Ultimately, the future of Los Santos and of our own world remains unwritten. The story of Los Santos is not an ending, it is a beginning, it is a call to action. The next move is ours.